All right, so for this next section here, we want to take a look at the UVs for our tire itself. Now, once again, I want to point out that there's many different ways to do tires. This is just the way that I'm choosing to do it this time. Sometimes I do it differently, but yeah. So next, I want to just show you how I have the UVs set up for this tire. So with that tire selected, we're going to go to our UV layout. And basically what I have here is the sort of outside or sidewall of the tire here in this big one-to-one space. This is the inside of the tire. It's black and not going to be very detailed. I could just scale this up to kind of have the same thing on both sides if I want, and I may do that later. And you can do that after you sort of do the texture if you want. And then for the tire tread itself, I kind of have it spread out beyond the one-to-one UV space because I'm going to be using this as a repeatable texture. That will work out fine. The main thing is that you want to make sure that you snap the beginning point to your whatever UV space you're going to. So in this case, I'm going to 3. And you want to snap the beginning point to 0. That will ensure that when we apply our repeatable texture to this in our actual texture or height map for the entire tire, that it'll sort of begin where it left off and just continue to repeat perfectly. So with that done, what we can do is just do a UV snapshot so we can then bring this into Photoshop and continue working on our tire tread height map. So in Photoshop here, I'm just going to do open, and then I already have my tire UV snapshot right here. So I'll just open that up. And then I like to kind of invert this. So Control I and then set this to multiply. Let's unlock it first, set it to multiply. In this case, we might want to keep it black since we're doing a height map here. So I'm going to invert it back and set it to, we'll set it to screen. So just depending on what you're doing, in this case, since we're doing black, I want to keep it a white wireframe here that we're looking at. And then I want to bring in my our height map for our tire tread that we created. So I'm just going to go to File, Place Embedded, and we'll select our height map there. And you'll see that this is, of course, a lot bigger than it needs to be. You know, it's going to fit in this space here, so this doesn't quite need to be as big as it is. But again, it's always better to make your textures bigger than you need them because you can always make them smaller. You can't make them bigger after the fact. So what I want to do is just rotate this by holding down Shift. And I don't want to quite scale this all the way down yet, but I can scale it down part of the way. So I'm going to hit Control T and scale this down a little bit. Again, not all the way, but we'll do something like that. And then what I want to do is we're probably going to have to get in really close to do this, but I want to duplicate this. I want to put this right on the edge, right there. And I want to duplicate this and get this to match up perfectly as many times as possible to make it to this edge here. And I'm, again, just holding down Shift. And what you may notice sometimes is you get like a little line right here. This is just that extra pixel. And what you can do is just hit your arrow key to the left just to move that over once. Just so we make sure that that matches up perfectly. And I'm holding down Shift so it doesn't sort of move vertically at all, or horizontally. And then just using my arrow keys to kind of nudge it over a little bit. And then one more, which will go a little bit beyond, but that's okay, because we're basically going to combine them all together and scale them down a bit. Just like that. And let's put our wireframe on top just so we can see where the boundaries are of that tread. And then I'm just going to combine all four of these together. So Control T, or not Control T, just select them all together, right click and do merge layers. And now I'm going to hit Control T and I'm going to scale it down to size. Oops. And you may want to zoom in a little bit here because you want that edge to be right on the edge. So let me zoom in a little bit to make sure we got that right. So that looks pretty close. Again, we can check this by using our offset. So let me hide my layers here. And I'm going to go to Filter, Other, Offset. And this time I just want to offset it horizontally a little bit, just to see if there's a line. So there is a bit of a line there. So I'm going to cancel that. And then I'm going to just go a little bit bigger. See if I can do like 1 pixel bigger. And then we'll try that offset again to make sure that there's no, oops, did vertical, do horizontal, and there's still a bit of a line there. So it may take a few tries to get that right. In worst case scenario, if it's wrong, what we can do is just offset it a little bit here. And then we can just clean that up with our pencil. But I think what's happening here is that even though we have this perfectly matched up, so if I go to my Control T, let's get this right to the edge here. So I think what's happening here is it's offsetting beyond the boundaries of our document here. So what we can do to fix that is just Control A to select all, Control C to copy, and then Control Shift V to paste that in place. And what that will do is basically copy and paste that into, but only at the boundaries. So to basically where it was. It makes a duplicate of it, but it basically cuts off any excess pixels that are on either side of our document here. So let's try it now. So we're still getting a bit of a line right there, but it's a lot less. So again, it may take a couple tries to get it right perfectly. And again, if it's not right perfectly, we can always just kind of clean it up a bit. And I think there's still a tiny bit of a line there. So I think what I'll do is I'll just clean that up a bit. So it'll be a good opportunity for me to show you how to do that. So I'm going to offset a little bit and just hit OK. And you'll see that we did go a bit beyond what we need to. So what I'll do is I'm just going to back up to what we had before. We'll try that again. So Control A to copy, Control C, Control Shift V to paste. And then I'll do an offset one more time. Again, there's probably a better way to do this. Don't sort of look at me as the guy that knows everything, because I'm sure there's a better way. I want the vertical offset to be 0. And it looks like we may have accidentally fixed it where there's no line anymore. Let me just look. Yeah, I don't see a line now. So I think we did kind of accidentally fix that. But if you do need to touch it up, you can just get a black paintbrush and kind of touch it up. And that will work fine. All right. So we have this going all the way to the end. I do think I want to shorten this a bit because I do want to add another little line right here, which will help sort of cover up or hide our seam that goes all the way around the tire. So I'll do Control T, and I'm just going to skew this in. Let's hold down Shift and skew this in so we don't mess up our alignment on each side. And I'm just going to bring this in beyond our UV sort of tile there a bit. And then we can hide this other layer. So we get something like that. And then what I want is just a very thin line of gray along this. Because a lot of tires will have like a little seam around the outside next to the tread anyway, just the way they're made. So I want to kind of use that to my advantage and be able to hide the seam that's going around the sidewall. So easy way to do that is just to grab your marquee select tool. And what you can do is you can do a single row marquee, which will just grab a single row of pixels. I think in this case, I may want more than 1 pixel. So let's just go something like this. And I just want it to sit inside of that UV area a little bit. And I'm just going to create a new layer. I'll go to my paint bucket tool, which is in my gradient. Hold down Alt, and I'm going to sample like a grayish color because I don't want it to be quite as high as this, but I don't want it to be super low either. So I'm just going to get like a medium gray here and just fill that in with a medium gray. And then we can just grab that layer and just move that down here as well. All right, so now we're ready to make our text on the tire itself. So what I'm going to do for this is to put a layer below here and just make it black. So just go to my paint bucket tool and just fill a bottom layer with black. That way we can turn off this top layer or wireframe layer and we can still see black. Otherwise it just goes all white. So to make our type, what I want to do is grab our shape tool and I'm going to hold down Shift and drag out a circle. Holding down Shift will make sure it's a perfect circle, and then you can use your spacebar tool to kind of move it around. So I'm just trying to get this to match the UV as much as possible here. So something like that's pretty good. And this doesn't really need a color, but just so we can see the line, I'm going to give it no fill, and we'll give it a white stroke color. We'll eventually get rid of it, but just so we can see it. All right, and then I'm going to go to my type tool. And if you sort of hover over your line here with your type tool, you'll get a type on path. I do want to make sure that our color is white to begin with for our type tool. All right, and I actually want my circle to be below here. So like my text is going to be on top of this circle. So I want to hold down Alt and just scale this in a bit until it's somewhere around here. So our text will actually be on top of the circle. And then with my type tool, if I hover over the line here, then I can type on the path. So I'm going to make sure my color here is white. Click that, and then we can type radial and then T/A. And increase the font size for this. Be about as big as we want it to be. So maybe something like that. And I'm actually going to make it a bit smaller for now because I'm going to change the font. So we'll look at different fonts for this. Typically you want it to be something thick. So that's kind of thick there. That's kind of like a NASA, font. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, just find a font that you like. Again, this is kind of your world here. You don't have to match it exactly the way that your reference is unless you want to. But you do have some creative freedom here. That one's kind of cool. I think we'll stick with that one. And again, increase our font size a bit more. And then what I want to do is select my path here. And we should be able to delete the path. And now we just have our font here. So I can grab this and I can just pull this down. Oops. Make sure I have the right layer selected there. Just pull that down. And again, Control T. Actually, we don't even have to pull it down. What we can do is just make a duplicate by holding down Alt and dragging down a duplicate there. And then if we hit Control T, it will still have its type on path. And then we can just rotate that around to the bottom. Now that doesn't match up perfectly, but let's just move it to get it to about the same position there. Now I want to get sort of two different textures out of this. I want to get like a color texture, which in this case, the only thing that's going to have color is the radial TA. And then I want to get our height map. So our height map, I also want to have this have a bit of a fall off like our tread pattern does. So what I want to do first is just go ahead and save off a color map that's just black and white for our color here. And I can also use this as an alpha later as well. So I'm just going to hide basically everything except for our text. Just like that. And then I'm going to save off a copy. And I'm going to call this tire text alpha. And then I'm going to unhide everything again except for except for like this tread that's below the other one and our wireframe. We don't really need the wireframe anymore. And then I kind of want to apply the same layer style to the text that we had on our tread. So I'm just going to double click one of our copies here to get our layer styles and do an outer glow. And I should have the same settings here. I do think it's a bit thicker in this case, so I'm going to kind of decrease the size a bit. So something along the lines of this. I think that looks good. And then what I can do is just copy this layer style, copy layer style, and then right click and paste layer style. So it's on both of those. And now we have our complete tire texture height map that we can then bring into Substance Painter and finish texturing our tires. So I'm going to save this out one last time as a copy, and I'm going to name this tire height map. Before I do that, one thing that I generally like to do with my textures is put the size of the texture in the name. So if we go to image size, we can see that this is a if we go to pixels, this is a 2048 texture. So when I save this out, I'm just going to make sure I have the right name. So I save a copy, and we'll name this tire height map 2048. That way I can look at it. I can just look at the name and know what size the texture is. All right, so in the next lesson, we will jump into Substance Painter and take a look at how we can apply all these maps that we made to our tire model.